Okay, hello, welcome to my discussion on Module 7, Chapter 11. I am starting with number 2, talking about the interaction of new technologies and communication as they relate to network organizations. So in the book, there is the social interaction approach discussed, which is basically how close does the technology come to a face-to-face interaction. So face-to-face is the standard, and how close can you get with your technology. Social integration is characterized by like how the media is represented or is judged according to how people use it to create community. So that's kind of the criteria. My experience with my organization and the place where I work, so I'll give a couple examples. First, Google Groups. It's very similar to what was in our case study, the email listserv they talked about. So I am a part of a group that is multi-organization, so not just my organization, but people who are working with, and it happens to be the homeless community, so very similar again. And what I have found is also very similar to the case study, that it is a very active page. So you get, people will email the listserv questions or have services they're offering or an event that's coming up. And there are, I think, 1,000 different people who are part of this group. And so they are able to, interact to some degree. So you get an alert that, there's a new thing coming up, or you get an alert, does anybody know where to find, clothing for, winter for these people, or whatever, things like that. And like I said, it is very active, and it meets, so the function, how it works is that you have to join the group, and then you can post on the group, and you can just read the summary. We are discouraged from replying to all, so if you do have an answer to someone's question, only you are getting that answer, not everyone, which is good that you don't get a lot of emails all the time, but bad if you're actually curious about what the answer was to someone's question. And the function it serves is that it meets those needs in the community where we can interact pretty easily with one another. The other example I have is texting. Very basic, I know, but I do use it a lot in my job. So how is it used? My work has issued me an iPhone and a phone number. They have lots of securities on there, but I can use the texting. And the way it functions is that I'm able to contact people, like I call them first. If they don't answer, or if it's maybe the first time I am calling them and they don't recognize my phone number, they usually don't answer. So I can text and say, hey, this is who I am, this is why I'm reaching out to you. And then they kind of are like, oh, okay, so then I'll save the number or whatever. So that's one way it kind of bridges that I don't know who's calling issue. And then also when I am talking with people, I am able to kind of follow up with sending them a link to some further information that might help what we were just talking about. So it is a way to get out information to them in a very easy way. I send videos for people to kind of look up and get help that way. So it really is very useful for what I do. Then the next question is number 3. So looking at the media richness model, the social presence theory, and the social information processing theory. For media richness, so how rich something is means it has a high potential to carry information. And if it's lean, that means it has a low potential to carry information. And we saw that grid that, goes from like 0 to 10 or whatever, lean to rich. So for example, in my job, before COVID, would meet with clients face to face. Obviously, that's very rich, right? So, that's the ultimate. We're meeting face to face. I would do home visits. I could teach classes in the office that they would come to, again, in person. So, very rich as far as media. How things have shifted is now I'm mostly doing phone calls. I do text, like I said, and also some video conferencing. So on that scale, video conferencing would be about as high as you can get with media outside of, face-to-face, and then kind of down from there. So phone, more rich than text, and so on. The social presence theory is... So I feel less involved and connected when using mediated communication. Or it feels less involved and connected. So for instance, like when you are in a webinar, or you used to go to a conference, or you used to go to a meeting, and now it's a video conference. Just so different. So we used to do conferences a couple times a year. You would have the interaction, usually you're driving to the conference with someone. I've done many conferences that were a couple hours away, so I'm spending that time with my coworkers, talking, getting to know one another, or sharing, experiences that frustrate us, or interesting things that have happened, stuff like that. Just very much interpersonal. You're away from your regular job, from home, all of that, so you're that provides a unique bonding experience, as well as a unique level to really get engaged in the material, because you're not distracted with your everyday life. Okay, so versus now, most of the conferences I have done in the past year and a half not most, all of them have been online, and I'm distracted. I'm not fully engaged because of, just whatever. You're just sitting there like you have been all day for all your other work. It's not like that different feeling. My coworkers are also participating in the conference, in their office or at their home. So we are not connected. We're not together. We can text one another during it, oh, that was interesting, or I didn't know that, or whatever, but not even close to the same. So just a very different thing. Then the social information processing theory argues that instead of comparing to in-person, like I just did, meetings, that the CMC, or the computer-mediated communication, kind of holds its own unique qualities that are to be, or ought to be, judged and valued apart from the comparison. So we're going to now look at, what is good about it on its own that, maybe you can't have with in person. So obviously the convenience, in my scenario of conferences, I don't have to go anywhere, it costs less money, it's easily accessible, just so many, they can reach a wider group of people, because people aren't having to travel and pay and find hotel and food and all of that. So great, it's very much more accessible, yet I just still feel like it's much less effective. So again, also, if you were to look at texting, it definitely has a place. So according to the processing theory, it really is so different than in person and a phone call. It does have things that help my job. I'm accessible to people. They can shoot me a text if they have a question about something. I don't have to get to it right away, but they got it off their mind, and now I have it on my radar. So it saves a lot of time and energy. I do still home visits, non-contact home visits, kind of where I'm bringing or delivering something to someone. So I have their phone number with me. I have their address. I have my map because it's all on my phone. So there is that. So definitely has a place for sure. Okay, so then when we look at the case study, I thought it was super interesting because it is very, very much like things I've experienced in my own organization. I was struck by, so section 1.3, technology and culture, part 1. So the book says, because of extension transference, it often happens that where technology has been designed to extend human capacity, because of the need to continue to create tools, and so on, the distance between human capacity and the technology widens. So in the case study, the homeless service providers are really used to working more hands-on with people. They are used to like conventional ways, paper and maybe phone calls, but a lot of in person, less technological means, because technology is for the most part inaccessible. At least a few years ago, I find that a lot of homeless people do have cell phones, but they still struggle with Wi-Fi connection, having to be in a hotspot, stuff like that. So there are definite limitations for that. So given the unique needs and dynamics surrounding that situation, it seemed ineffective to the service providers to engage in high context technology up until that point, up until they were offered, all the fancy computer and the Wi-Fi connection and the training to use this new software. So moving on, section 1.5 in the book says assumptions about progress. There's culturally Americans tend to assume progress is good. So the future looks bright, progress is good, it's bigger, it's better, we want it. Monica, Derek, and Trevor in the case study have that mindset, of course, around technology that they have designed. They're familiar with the homelessness problem in their area. They see gaps in how the problem's being addressed, and so there are many, they see many disjointed services being provided, and the providers not always knowing what one another is able to provide for the homeless population, and maybe overlapping or maybe missing services. So that's what they think. Let's do more. Let's provide better technology. Then I just wanted to also mention, I really thought that I think it was the social interaction approach, in which that compares the new technology being studied to how close it comes to face-to-face. Kind of, we talked about that before. In-person communication is the standard. So the case study, you can say that the email list, even though on the media richness thing that might be low, but in this context, the email list actually, it came closest to an in-person interaction, or at least it met the need of this group of providers. That's probably why it was so successful. Another aspect that seemed to be implemented to some degree by the providers, unlike a lot of the other things, was the highlight of each organization, each month or week or whatever, and maybe new things they're providing, or a focus on, them. So that also was popular among the service providers. So the success of these seem to be closely related to an in-person interaction, where you're able to hear about a person's organization, their areas of expertise, special projects, like I said, that they're involved in. So it more met that personal interaction need. Then just one last thing. So the social information processing theory in section 3.4 of the book states that relationship building through computer mediated communication is not inherently inferior to face-to-face relationships. Rather, it can be regarded as a medium that operates with a different set of cues. So a different set of procedures involved in CMC versus in person, which allows for the exchange of interpersonal information. So the strength of what came out of the email list being available to the homeless service providers in the case study was that it met a different need than they could ever have had in person or with the other software and stuff. So it had a specific gap that it filled. And it brought together the organizations, and they were able to collaborate more easily. So that's all I have. Thank you.